welcome to everyone. I am so happy to be here and to tell you my story. What I'm going to describe for you today is a journey of epic proportions, my own traversal of the boundaries between humanities and business. Now, humanities are an interesting discipline. They include things like the study of language and literature, philosophy, and the arts. They're not a natural or a social science per se. And I believe, based on my own experience, that I was really born to be a humanist. But I was able to make a transition from one world to another. Not quite seamlessly, mind you, but I was able to make it. Now, to understand where I'm coming from, we'll go back quite a ways to when I was just a young child. A lot of people say this, but when I say it, I mean it. I loved the written word as a child. I loved to read. To give you an idea of the intensity of this feeling that I had, when I was in 4th grade, I had my very first sleepover. I invited Tana Sabo from my 4th grade class to come and spend the night at my house. And all I really knew about sleepovers is you're supposed to really have a lot of fun. And so when we were in our PJs, it was evening before the hard stop of going to sleep, I brought to Tana a copy of my favorite book from the Little House on the Prairie series. And I gave it to her and I said, "Here, this is really good." Because the most fun that I could imagine for a sleepover was sitting and reading quietly together. And we did. Bless Tana's heart, she was such a good sport. She sat and she read with me before we went to sleep, and then she never came to my house again. But language and literature wasn't my only love. I loved the performing arts as well. I was involved in speech and drama in high school. I would say maybe the high/low light of my performing arts resume is a 7th place finish at the Montana State High School competitive drama meet in the event of mime. Now, I was in 7th place in mime in the state of Montana, and I promise you there were more than 7 competitors in that event. But I loved it. I loved the delivery. I loved the excitement. And when I got to college, I went major shopping in the College of Humanities. I took the Humanities 101 course. It's a survey course where you learn about architecture and art and music, and I loved it. I loved the discovery and the connection from one work to another. I remember exactly where I was standing. I can visualize the room when I realized that Weezer's Pinkerton album is essentially one big allusion to Puccini's Madame Butterfly. This was profound to me. And if you don't know Weezer and you don't know Puccini, that will mean nothing to you. But if you know them both, it will mean everything. I loved it. I loved that discovery and understanding how works are connected and how through illusion you can access the meaning contained in a whole world just through one word. I loved still literature and language. When I say I took English literature, I mean that I took it. I loved reading, I loved composing. I remember a work that I created, a poem about the mountains at sunset, in which I created a metaphor comparing a mountain to a large woman wearing pink spandex. You can't make this stuff up. So I loved the creativity and the ownership that came from that. Now, eventually I made my way to linguistics, which for me is the perfect blend of art and science. This is a discipline where you can approach language from a social, a cultural, a computational point of view. And it seemed to me that the possibilities were endless. I was a duck and linguistics was the water. And I was happy. Now, through this journey, as I was in college, there was a thought nagging at the back of my mind. And this is a thought that haunts many humanities majors. The thought was, how am I going to make money when this joyride is over? So I went into education. I got a degree in teaching English to speakers of other languages, and I was very, very happy there. I did reach a point where I began to look for something more. I knew that in my professional development, I wasn't finished. and I wasn't quite sure what direction to take. And it was at that point in my life where I had one of the most important conversations of my adult life. I talked to a friend who was getting a master's in business administration, and her focus was organizational behavior and human resources. And as she saw me searching for the next step, she suggested business school to me. And my reaction was swift and unequivocal. I told her, thank you very much, but I am not interested in money. I am not interested in title or position, and I do not own, nor do I plan to own, a pantsuit. And I was serious. But as she explained to me what organizational behavior was in particular, what human resources could be, I got intrigued, and I decided to apply to the business program. And through certain circumstances, I was accepted early, and I had 2 years in which to decide if I really wanted to make that jump. So I decided to conduct some action research of my own in the business world. And I went and I got a job in 2008 in an industry related to mortgages. This is the loan modification industry. This is a business where our job was to act as an intermediary between people whose loans were in distress, who were in danger of foreclosure, and the banks. Part of my job was to write letters of distress on behalf of these loan holders to the banks, explaining the dire circumstances of the people holding the mortgages. And this was grim work. This was me putting my humanities training, my communication, my verbal ability to work. But the grimness of that work is not the reason that I lasted 6 weeks in that job. That can be explained by the fact that the then owner was later indicted on 9 felony counts of fraud. That was not an auspicious beginning for the business world for me in my mind. Now, luckily, that was not the end of my action research. I had a wonderful experience as a project manager for a language services company. It was the perfect intersection of business and language for me. And so I felt encouraged enough to move forward and enter the MBA program. Not without trepidation, though. When I arrived at business school, I felt like a stranger in a strange land. I felt like any moment people would discover that I shouldn't be there and they would throw me out. And at this point, you're asking yourself, is that what happened? No, of course not. I'm here 2 weeks away from graduation with a job waiting for me in corporate America. And no one is no one is more relieved and no one is more surprised than me. But what I found as I started business school was not that I was just lucky to be there. I found that I brought with me a unique and interesting and powerful set of tools thanks to my humanities training. Do you think that it's helpful to have studied a dynamic and infinite system like language when you're looking at business problems and business cases? It is. Do you think that it's helpful to have practiced communication ad nauseum, to have taught others how to communicate clearly and powerfully? It is in the business world. Ambiguity, subjectivity, things that we embrace in the humanities are a little bit of a bugaboo in the business world. And I was able to jump in with both feet and really, as we say, add value. And I loved it. And now I feel prepared. I may not be a duck in water, but I'm ready to jump into the new phase of my life, to continue drawing on the beauty and the humanity that I embraced in my earlier training and apply it to the business world. But am I an example for others to follow? Should everybody take a lesson from me? No. From an operations standpoint, I went about this in the most inefficient of ways. I went from one extreme to the other. I viewed it as an all or nothing proposition, and it is not so. And so my position today, my call to action today, is to teachers, to students, to future business people, to understand that these two worlds don't need to be mutually exclusive. They don't even need to be distant neighbors. We need to teach our students in business and the humanities not to choose one or the other, to move from one world to the other, but to occupy an intersection where they can maximize the value brought by a study in humanities and a study in business. We need to teach them why why humanities is applicable to business and how business can better instruct humanities majors as they prepare for the world of work. There's a model that I love as I was preparing for this speech. It's called Humanities Plus. It was created by an associate dean of the College of Humanities here. And the proposition is to bridge the humanities and the world of work. The proposition is to teach humanities majors that there is much to be said for analytical reasoning, for a more disciplined, dare I say, approach, a more quantitative way of thinking. And that there's much to be said on the business side to understand people, because guess who buys your products? Guess who you work with? My position today is not to follow my example and move from one world to the other. My position today is to understand, embrace, and occupy the best of both worlds. And I invite all of us to look at where we are coming from, look where we are going, and understand the why and how of each of us could combine the best of humanities, the best of business. Thank you.